On the distant planet of Velithia, the skies glowed with twin suns casting violet and gold light across endless forests and crystal rivers. In the heart of the capital above the tallest towers lived Princess Alira, the most beautiful and feared being in her world. Her silver hair shimmered like flowing starlight, and her eyes glowed with the pale gold of the twin suns. Every male of her species who dared approach her had tried to win her favor, offering jewels, ships, and even promises of power. All had failed. Alira rejected them all with a cold, effortless smile, a dismissive flick of her wrist, or a glance that made even the bravest warriors tremble. The people of Velithia whispered about her, saying she was untouchable. No one could claim her. No one could see her heart. But deep inside, Alira felt a loneliness that no wealth, no title, and no beauty could erase. She had grown up in a palace of gold and crystal, trained to rule with strength and poise, taught to be perfect, but never taught to trust, to love, or to be vulnerable. She had been raised in isolation, admired from a distance and feared by all. That isolation had made her strong, yes, but it had also left her heart heavy and empty. Alira wandered her palace halls each day, her mind restless. She looked at the forests beyond, the rivers reflecting sunlight like fire, and she imagined a life beyond the palace walls, one without expectations, without fear, without constant attention. But in her world, such freedom was impossible. Every choice she made was watched, every move analyzed. And yet, despite the golden cage around her, Alira had begun to dream of something real, something no Velithian could offer. Then one day a visitor arrived, someone no one had expected. His name was Marcus, a human from a world far beyond the stars. Unlike the tall, flawless Velithians, Marcus was simple in appearance. He was smaller, his hair dark and unkempt, his clothing rough but clean. He did not bow to the princess, did not offer gifts or flattery, and he did not tremble before her presence. He walked into the palace calmly, looking at everything with curiosity and respect. Alira observed him from her balcony, intrigued and annoyed at the same time. She had never seen a human behave like this. In all her life, she had encountered creatures who bowed and feared her, who sought her approval or her hand. Marcus did not seek her approval. He did not fear her, and strangely, this angered her and fascinated her. She decided to test him, to see what made him so different. She summoned him to the Crystal Gardens, a place filled with glowing plants and streams that shined like liquid light. The air was fragrant, the light magical, and the garden seemed alive with energy. "Human," she said, her voice sharp, echoing across the garden. "You have traveled far to see my world. Do you know the price of disrespect?" Marcus looked at her without flinching. "I do not fear you," he said softly. "I only wish to learn." Alira's golden eyes narrowed. Most beings would have knelt or begged for mercy. Not him. "Many have tried to impress me," she said. "They have fallen. They have begged. They have died. You will do the same." Marcus did not speak for a long moment. Then he simply nodded. "Then I will learn from failure," he said quietly. "If I fail, I will rise again. That is all any of us can do." The princess felt a strange stir in her chest, a mix of irritation and curiosity. How could a simple human withstand her tests, her presence, her challenges? And yet, something about his calm confidence drew her in, like the warmth of a distant sun reaching her frozen heart. For the first time in her life, Alira wondered, was this human different from all the rest? Could he be something more than a visitor? She didn't know yet, but she would find out. After the first meeting in the Crystal Garden, Princess Alira decided to put Marcus to the test. She could not understand why this human was different. No Velithian male had ever walked beside her without fear, yet he did. No Velithian had ever dared to speak to her as an equal, yet he did. Alira's pride burned inside her. How dare this human seem unafraid? She wanted to break him, to prove her superiority, but a small, unfamiliar curiosity tugged at her heart. She led him to the floating cliffs of Velithia, sheer drops where the wind howled like a living creature. "Climb to the top," she commanded, her voice firm. "Only then will you be allowed to see the heart of my world." Marcus looked up at the cliffs. They were impossibly high, their jagged edges sharp as knives. Most Velithians would take days to ascend, and many would fall. "I will try," he said simply. No fear, no hesitation. Alira's golden eyes widened. Most would have begged, but not him. "You will fail," she warned, almost angrily. "I may," he admitted, "but I will rise again." The climb was brutal. Sharp rocks tore at his hands and legs. Gale winds nearly threw him into the abyss. Elira watched silently, feeling a strange mix of pride and frustration. Hours passed. Marcus fell again and again, scraping, bleeding, and panting, but he never gave up. Each time he fell, he gritted his teeth, shook off the dust, and began again. By nightfall, he reached the first plateau. Elira, watching from above, felt her heart beat faster. Not with fear or anger, but with admiration. No Velithian male had ever shown this determination. They had all turned back, broken by the climb or by the fear of failing her. But Marcus, he was human, and humans had a stubbornness she did not understand. The next day she tested his mind.
"Solve the puzzles of the Moonlight Labyrinth," she said.
It was a place where only the wisest Velithians could find their way. One wrong turn and the floor would open into a pit. Marcus entered without hesitation. Elira followed silently, expecting him to panic. Hours later he emerged, tired but smiling. "It's not about knowing everything," he said simply. "It's about learning from the mistakes you make." Elira's pride bristled. She had never met anyone who spoke with such calm confidence. She was supposed to intimidate him. She was supposed to crush him. Yet here he was, standing tall despite every test, every danger. Something inside her shifted. Over the next few days, Elira created even harsher trials. She sent him into the dead forest where plants could poison a human in minutes. She led him to the river of fire, where the current burned like molten metal. Each time Marcus faltered. He fell into water, scratched by deadly branches, burned by the heat, but he never complained. He never begged. He never gave up. The princess found herself thinking about him constantly. When he was not in sight, she watched from her towers. She wondered how someone so fragile by Velithian standards could endure so much. He was different. He was fearless in ways she had never seen. And for the first time in her life, Elira felt something unfamiliar. Respect. But she would never admit it. Pride was ingrained in her. She could not allow herself to care. Still, a strange warmth stirred inside her chest whenever Marcus smiled. Even in pain, even in exhaustion. It was maddening, frustrating, and impossible to ignore. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and violet, Elira approached him quietly in the gardens. She could not hide her curiosity any longer. "Human," she said softly, almost without thinking. "Why do you endure this? Why do you risk yourself for nothing?" Marcus looked at her, his dark eyes calm and steady. "Because strength is not just about power," he said. "It is about persistence. It is about hope. And sometimes it is about teaching someone else that they can trust you." Elira's chest tightened. His words pierced through the wall she had built around her heart. He was not trying to impress her. He was not trying to win her favor. And yet somehow he had already begun to change her. For the first time, Elira realized that she could not simply reject this human like all the others. He was different. And deep down, she feared that if she failed to understand him, she might lose something she had never even known she wanted. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus continued to prove himself. Each challenge Elira gave him, each test of strength, skill, or wit, he met with patience and determination. The princess had expected him to falter, to beg, to show weakness, but he never did. Every failure was met with a calm smile and a willingness to try again. This relentless courage fascinated Elira, and slowly, she felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack. She began to notice small things about him. How he treated her guards with respect, never looking down on them. How he spoke gently to the palace servants, thanking them for their help. How he listened when others spoke, truly listened without judgment. His humanity, simple, flawed, and yet unshakably kind, was unlike anything Elira had ever seen among her own people. One evening, while walking alone in the crystal gardens, Elira found herself thinking about him more than she wished to admit. The sky was painted with the colors of the twin suns setting behind the violet forests. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a flutter she had never felt before. She shook her head, trying to dismiss it. She was the princess of Velithia, untouchable and powerful. She could not, would not, let herself care for a human. But Marcus had already begun to leave his mark. The next day, he approached her during the morning training, his dark eyes calm and steady. "You push me hard, Elira," he said, using her name as if they were equals. But I would rather face your challenges than walk through a world without them. You make me stronger. Elira felt her chest tighten. No Velithian male had ever spoken to her with such honesty. Most would have flattered her, tried to win her approval, or fled in fear. Marcus sai. To none of these things. He simply spoke the truth. She wanted to look away, but she could not. She realized with a jolt that she cared what he thought. Her emotions became a storm she could not control. She felt admiration, confusion, irritation, and a strange longing all at once. He had awakened something inside her, a part of her heart that had been buried under duty, pride, and loneliness. She had been untouchable, and yet Marcus had touched her in ways no one else ever could. One afternoon, after another exhausting trial in the dead forest, Elira found Marcus tending to an injured creature. Its wings were broken, its body trembling in fear. He whispered softly, coaxing it to trust him, and after some effort the creature calmed. Elira watched silently from behind a tree, her golden eyes wide. She realized with a mix of awe and guilt that she had never cared for life in this way. She had spent so many years ruling, judging, and rejecting, yet this human had shown her that strength could also mean compassion, that courage could also mean patience. That being powerful did not mean being alone. That night she could not sleep. The palace felt emptier than ever, though Marcus was still there. She found herself thinking about him constantly, imagining his smile, his calm voice, his gentle hands. She hated that she could not stop thinking about him. She hated that her pride and her loneliness both fought for dominance inside her chest. Marcus, unknowingly, had become a mirror to her soul. He had forced her to see what she had never allowed herself to feel: vulnerability, trust, and even hope. Elira realized that he was not trying to conquer her, nor was he trying to impress her. He simply existed, steadfast and true, and that was enough to change everything about her. Yet she refused to admit it to herself. Pride still held her tongue. Fear of her own feelings kept her from acknowledging the truth. But deep down, Elira knew that nothing would ever be the same. She had met a human who could endure her tests, survive her challenges, and touch her heart in ways no one else ever could. And whether she liked it or not, she was beginning to care. The calm of Velithia's palace did not last long. Word of Marcus's presence spread through the corridors and chambers like wildfire. The Velithian Council, a group of powerful elders who ruled alongside the princess, began to murmur in disapproval. They saw a human as a threat, not just to Elira's heart, but to the very balance of their world. Velithians were strong, proud, and disciplined. Humans were weak, unpredictable, and emotional. How could such a creature influence their princess? Some council members whispered that Marcus must be removed. They argued that no outsider could understand Velithia's ways or guide its leader. He is dangerous, one elder said, his voice low and stern. He may appear harmless, but he is a stranger. We cannot allow him to change the princess's heart or her mind. Elira overheard these conversations while walking in the crystal corridors. Her chest tightened, a mixture of anger and fear rising inside her. No one will touch him, she said quietly, her voice trembling but firm. He came to learn, not to conquer. He will not be harmed while I live. Yet fear gnawed at her heart. She had never experienced such protectiveness before. Marcus, who had never asked for her favor or her protection, had become someone she could not bear to lose. The thought of him being taken from her filled her with a terror she did not understand. She had rejected every suitor, every male, for her whole life. And yet now she would fight anyone, even her own council, to keep him safe. The council did not wait long. One evening, while Marcus explored the forests outside the palace walls, a group of elite guards ambushed him. The human fought bravely, his strength and cleverness holding off several attackers at once, but he was outnumbered. Just as one of the guards struck him from behind, Elira arrived, her presence a sudden brilliant force. Her silver hair gleamed in the light of the twin suns, her eyes blazing with golden fury. "Stop," she commanded, and the guards froze, bowing their heads in fear. "You will not harm him, not now. Not ever." Marcus looked up at her, stunned, a mix of relief and awe on his face. "Elira," he breathed, his chest heaving. "You came for me. I would come for you," she said, her voice shaking. "Even if it meant defying the council, even if it meant risking everything." The council watched from the shadows, their expressions a mix of anger, surprise, and fear. For the first time they saw that Elira's heart was not untouchable. It had been awakened, and the one who had done it was not a Velithian male, but a human. After the ambush, Elira stood beside Marcus as he caught his breath. She helped him to his feet, supporting him with a tenderness she had never shown to anyone. Her golden eyes met his, and for a brief moment words were unnecessary. The trust, the bond, and the fierce protectiveness between them were clear. Later that night, in the quiet of the crystal gardens, Elira sat beside Marcus. The stars shone brightly above, reflecting off the crystal leaves. She finally spoke, her voice almost a whisper. I cannot let them hurt you. I cannot lose you." Marcus looked at her with steady eyes. "You don't have to lose me," he said. "I am here because I want to be. Because I trust you." Her chest tightened, emotions overwhelming her. She had spent her life rejecting everyone to appear untouchable, to hide her vulnerabilities. And yet here she was, admitting to herself that she feared losing someone more than anything else in the universe. The walls around her heart, built over decades of pride and isolation, were crumbling. Elira realized something important that night. She had never truly understood the meaning of trust, loyalty, or love. Marcus had shown her that strength did not only come from power, skill, or authority. It came from courage, compassion, and connection. And now she would fight not for herself, but for the man who had quietly changed her entire world. The princess of Velithia, untouchable and feared for so long, had begun to learn what it meant to care, to protect, and to love. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. The days after the ambush were tense, but they also brought a new closeness between Elira and Marcus. The princess had never admitted weakness, never let anyone see her fear or vulnerability, but Marcus had changed that. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to realize how much she needed his presence. Not just for protection, but for understanding, for companionship, for something she could not name. One morning, they walked together along the river of fire, where molten currents shimmered beneath crystal bridges. Elira's golden eyes reflected the heat and glow, her expression unreadable. Marcus, walking beside her, did not flinch from the danger. "Why do you endure so much, human?" she asked, her voice low, almost accusing. "Why do you risk yourself for someone like me?" Marcus glanced at her, calm and steady. "Because strength is not only measured in power or skill, it is measured in how you face challenges, how you help others, and how you stay true to yourself." Elira's chest tightened. She had spent her entire life measuring strength as control, dominance, and victory. To hear him speak of courage, kindness, and trust as the true measures of strength was confusing. And yet deep inside she felt the truth of his words. He had survived her tests not because he was stronger than any Velithian, but because he had refused to give up, because he had endured with patience, and because he had stayed honest even in the face of danger. Later, Marcus challenged her in a way no one else ever had. In the palace's crystal garden, he looked at her with soft intensity. "Elira," he said, "you have rejected everyone because you were afraid. Afraid of being hurt, afraid of showing weakness, afraid of losing control. But you do not need to hide anymore. Strength does not mean standing alone. It means trusting someone enough to let them share your burden." Elira felt her heart pound. She had never begged for anything in her life. She had never admitted that she needed someone, that she wanted someone. Her pride screamed at her to remain untouchable. And yet when she looked into Marcus's steady eyes, she felt the walls she had built for decades crumble. She began, her voice catching. She looked away, ashamed of the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "I do not know if I can—" Marcus reached out, placing a hand gently on hers. "You can. You just need to try. Not for me, but for yourself. Being untouchable does not make you strong. Letting someone in does." For a long moment, Elira said nothing. She could feel the heat of the suns above, the gentle sway of the crystal leaves, the rhythm of her own heartbeat, and it all reminded her how long she had been alone, how long she had hidden behind pride and cold smiles. She realized that her isolation had not protected her. It had trapped her. Finally, she looked at him, tears glimmering in her golden eyes. I have never trusted anyone," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I have never allowed anyone to see me as I truly am." Marcus smiled softly, squeezing her hand. "Then trust me," he said. "Not because you must, but because you want to. Not because I demand it, but because it will free you." Elira's chest felt tight, and for the first time she felt the courage to surrender. Not to force, not to expectation, but to choice. Her heart, long frozen in loneliness and pride, began to thaw. She did not beg in fear or desperation. She allowed herself to beg in hope, in trust, in a desire for connection. In that moment, Marcus had not only survived her trials, he had passed the greatest test of all, teaching the untouchable princess the true meaning of strength. Strength, he showed, was not in victory over others. It was in vulnerability, in courage, and in the willingness to let someone stand beside you. Alira realized she had been fighting herself for decades, and for the first time she wanted to fight alongside someone. She wanted to share her burdens, to share her life, and to trust a human with her heart. The princess, once cold and untouchable, had begun to awaken. She had begun to understand that sometimes the greatest power in the universe came not from ruling over others, but from allowing oneself to be known and loved. The palace of Velithia, once a place of strict order and cold beauty, had begun to feel different. The air seemed warmer, the crystal corridors less intimidating, and even the gardens seemed brighter. Princess Alira, who had spent her life untouchable, was changing. She no longer walked alone. She no longer carried the weight of the world by herself. Marcus had become more than a visitor. He had become a companion, a teacher, and, slowly, the keeper of her heart. One morning, the twin suns rose in brilliant gold, painting the violet forests in warm light. Alira stood on the balcony, her silver hair catching the sun's rays, and watched Marcus walking below, examining the plants and creatures with curiosity. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a sensation both terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time she realized that she cared for someone, not for their power, their status, or their skill, but for who they truly were. That day, she decided to confront the fear she had buried for so long. She descended the balcony and walked toward Marcus, her heart pounding. "Marcus," she said softly, unsure if she could speak the words. I need to talk to you." He looked up and smiled, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "I'm listening," he said gently. Alira took a deep breath. "I have spent my life hiding behind pride, behind strength, behind untouchable walls. I have rejected everyone, pushed them away because I was afraid. Afraid of being hurt, afraid of losing control, afraid of being alone, but you have shown me something I never expected. You have shown me strength in kindness, courage in patience, and trust in truth. You have changed me, Marcus, and I do not want to be alone anymore." Marcus stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "You don't have to be," he said softly. "You never have to be. Not while I am here. Not while I choose to stand with you." Tears filled her eyes, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel without fear. She had never begged for anyone, never admitted weakness, and yet standing before Marcus she found the courage to surrender, not in submission but in trust. I trust you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus smiled, and in that moment the distance between their worlds seemed to vanish. He had not conquered her with power or charm. He had not forced her to yield through threats or commands. He had done something far more profound. He had earned her trust, her respect, and most importantly, her heart. From that day forward, Alira's transformation was visible to all. She moved through the palace with a new lightness, her interactions with the people gentler, her decisions wiser, and her laughter, once rare, echoing through the crystal halls. She was still a princess, strong, commanding, brilliant, but now she was human in a way she had never allowed herself to be. She was capable of love, trust, and vulnerability, and she had found someone who valued all of that. The council watched in awe. Marcus, the human outsider, had done what no Velithian male could. He had changed the untouchable princess from within, teaching her that true strength was not in isolation but in connection. Some elders were reluctant to accept it, but even they could not deny the bond between them. It was stronger than fear, stronger than pride, stronger than expectation. That evening, Alira and Marcus walked together in the crystal gardens, their hands brushing occasionally, their eyes meeting with unspoken understanding. The twin suns set, casting a golden-purple glow over the palace. Alira rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, feeling a peace she had never known. The princess who had rejected all males, who had spurned every suitor and lover, had finally allowed herself to open her heart. She did not feel weak. She felt alive. She felt strong in a new way. Strong in love, strong in trust, and strong in the courage to face the world with someone by her side. Alira had learned the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes, it takes someone from another world to teach you the true meaning of strength. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is beg, not for power, not for submission, but for connection, for love, and for a chance to be truly seen. As night fell, Elira held Marcus's hand tightly, her heart beating steadily, full of warmth and certainty. She had changed. She had grown. And she would never be the same again. The palace of Velithia had changed forever. The golden halls and crystal corridors, once symbols of cold authority and fear, now reflected warmth, hope, and life. Princess Elira, the untouchable ruler who had rejected all males for decades, had finally opened her heart. And it was all because of a human who had refused to bow, refused to beg, and refused to be broken. Marcus had taught her what no Velithian could, that true strength comes from connection, trust, and courage born of love. That morning, the twin suns rose over the violet forests, casting their warm glow across the palace gardens. Elira stood at the balcony, her silver hair catching the sunlight, her golden eyes calm but bright with emotion. Below, Marcus tended to a wounded bird, gently wrapping its fragile wings. She watched him for a long moment, feeling a strange mixture of pride, love, and awe. This human, so far from home, had survived her tests, endured her challenges, and touched her heart in ways no one else could. She descended the balcony and walked to him, her heart beating faster than it ever had. "Marcus," she said softly, I want you to know something." He looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. "I'm listening," he replied, a gentle smile on his face. "I was proud, stubborn, untouchable," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I rejected everyone because I was afraid of being weak, afraid of being alone. But you have shown me that strength is not in isolation, not in pride, not in fear. Strength is in trust. Strength is in courage. Strength is in connection. And you have given me all of that." Marcus stepped closer, taking her hands in his, feeling their warmth, their tension, their life. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said softly. "I am here and I choose to stay. Not because you need me, but because I want to. Not because I demand it, but because you have shown me the beauty of your heart." Tears shimmered in Elira's golden eyes. She had never begged for anything in her life, never asked for anyone to stay, never allowed herself to be vulnerable. And yet here she was, letting her heart speak without fear. I want you to stay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I need you. I trust you." Marcus smiled and pulled her into a gentle embrace. She rested her head on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat, the warmth of his body, and the safety of someone who would never abandon her. For the first time in centuries, Elira felt free, not free from duty, not free from responsibility, but free from the fear that had imprisoned her heart for so long. The council and the people of Velithia watched from afar. They saw the untouchable princess, feared for her pride and strength, walking beside a human with a newfound grace and humility. Some whispered in awe, some in disbelief, but all recognized a truth they could not deny. This human had done what no Velithian could. He had changed the heart of their princess. Days turned into weeks, and Elira and Marcus became inseparable. She shared her burdens, her thoughts, and her dreams with him. They laughed together, trained together, explored the forests and rivers, and faced dangers side by side. The bond they had formed was no longer tested by fear or survival, but by trust, love, and shared experience. One evening, as the twin suns set behind the violet horizon, Elira and Marcus stood together on the highest tower. The wind brushed their hair, and the golden-purple sky reflected their intertwined silhouettes. Elira looked at Marcus and whispered, "You have shown me that even a princess can beg, not for mercy, not for power, but for connection, for love, for life." Marcus kissed her forehead softly. "And you have shown me that even the strongest heart can open, that even the untouchable can learn to trust, that even worlds apart, two beings can find each other and change everything." The princess smiled, her golden eyes glowing with warmth. She had rejected all before, but she had not rejected the human who had taught her the greatest lesson of all. That strength, courage, and true power were nothing without love and trust. From that day forward, Elira and Marcus walked together, rulers of their world and hearts united beyond the stars. The princess who had once been untouchable had finally learned to live, to love, and to trust. And the human who had dared to defy her had shown the people of Velithia what it truly meant to be strong, what it truly meant to be human. The twin suns set over the violet forests, casting a golden-purple glow over the palace. Alira held Marcus's hand tightly, her heart beating in rhythm with his. She was no longer untouchable. She was no longer alone. She was alive, loved and free. The end, a child who represented the future of both their species. In that quiet moment, Daniel realized something profound. Humanity had traveled to the stars, faced unknown dangers, and conquered impossible odds. But its greatest triumphs were not in battles won or planets conquered.